The restaurant was alive with the soft hum of conversation, clinking glasses, and the quiet shuffle of polished shoes on marble floors. It was Friday evening, and the city's elite had started to trickle in. Maya, a young black waitress with a warm smile and bright eyes, moved gracefully between tables, balancing trays of food and drinks with practiced ease. She loved this part of her job: the small interactions, the polite smiles, and the feeling of being useful. Her shift had started late in the afternoon, and she already felt the ache in her feet. Still, she never let it show. She adjusted her uniform, straightened her apron, and greeted the next table with a cheerful, "Good evening. Can I get you started with drinks?" The guests smiled back, some offering a polite nod, others chatting with each other as Maya jotted down their orders. She had learned to read people quickly. Regulars liked her to anticipate their needs, new customers often wanted her guidance through the menu. Tonight, she noticed the usual patterns: the businessman in the corner tapping on his phone, the couple quietly celebrating an anniversary, a group of friends laughing over a shared bottle of wine. It all felt familiar, almost comforting, until the door swung open with a soft jingle, and everything shifted. A man entered with quiet authority, his steps measured and confident. He wore a dark suit that seemed expensive but understated, and his presence commanded attention without a word. Heads turned slightly as he moved to a table near the center of the restaurant. Maya felt a subtle thrill of curiosity. She had served many important people before, but there was something about him, a certain calm, almost distant energy that made her heart skip. "Table for one," the man said, his voice smooth but low, carrying a hint of fatigue. "Right this way, sir," Maya replied, keeping her tone professional yet warm. She led him to the table, pulling out the chair politely and stepping back just enough to give him space. He nodded in acknowledgement, not speaking much, but his eyes scanned the room with careful observation. As she handed him the menu, Maya noticed a small crease in his brow, a sign of someone thinking far beyond the present moment. She decided to give him some space, yet she could not help but wonder what he would order. Moments later, she returned with a notepad in hand. "Have you decided, sir?" she asked softly. He looked up at her, his dark eyes meeting hers, and for a brief moment, Maya felt like he was looking right through her, not in a strange or uncomfortable way, but as if he were seeing something deeper. Then he spoke. "I'll have the steak. Medium rare, with a side of roasted vegetables and a glass of your finest red wine." Maya nodded, scribbling quickly. "Certainly, sir. Anything else I can get for you?" He shook his head slightly, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. Maya blinked in surprise as he slid it toward her across the table. "This is for you," he said simply, returning his attention to the menu, as if nothing unusual had happened. Maya hesitated. Notes were not typical in this restaurant, especially from wealthy guests who usually preferred silence or casual conversation. She picked it up discreetly, her fingers brushing the smooth paper. Carefully, she unfolded it, expecting perhaps a tip or a short message. But what she saw made her pause. She read the words slowly, almost holding her breath. The note was brief, handwritten, but it carried a tone she had never expected. It spoke of loneliness, of a life spent surrounded by people yet often feeling unseen. It was personal, raw, and strangely comforting. The billionaire, the man who seemed untouchable and serious, had chosen to share a piece of his heart with her. Maya felt her pulse quicken. She had been taught to remain professional, to keep boundaries clear. Yet she could not ignore the unexpected wave of empathy that washed over her. She folded the note carefully, hiding it in her apron pocket, and told herself to focus on the task at hand. "Your steak and vegetables will be ready shortly, sir," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. He gave her a small nod, and for the first time, Maya noticed a faint, almost imperceptible smile on his face. It was fleeting, but it carried warmth, something rare and human amidst the polished exterior. As Maya walked back to the kitchen to place the order, she could not stop thinking about the note. It had stirred something inside her, a mix of curiosity, empathy, and an unspoken connection she could not yet understand. The busy restaurant continued around her, but for Maya, time seemed to slow just a little, the evening taking on a new, unexpected meaning. Tonight, serving tables was no longer just a job. It had become something more, an encounter that could change how she saw the world, and perhaps, how someone else saw it too. Maya returned to the kitchen, her mind buzzing with the words from the note. She carefully placed the order for the steak exactly as the man had requested, double-checking each detail. Medium rare, roasted vegetables, and a glass of the finest red wine. She moved with precision, yet her thoughts kept drifting back to the note. It was unusual for someone so wealthy and serious to share something so personal. She took a deep breath and reminded herself to stay professional. She had worked in the restaurant for over 3 years and had learned that appearances could be deceiving. Wealth, power, and status often hid real people behind masks. But this man, Mr. Dalton, as she had learned from the reservation, had given her a glimpse of the person beneath the suit. It made her heart feel strangely light and heavy at the same time. When the steak was ready, Maya carefully carried it to his table. Her hands were steady, though a small knot of nervousness lingered in her stomach. She placed the plate in front of him, making sure everything looked perfect. The aroma of the steak, grilled to perfection, filled the air, mixing with the faint scent of roasted vegetables. "Your steak, sir." "Medium rare, just as requested," Maya said with a polite smile. He looked up, and for a moment, their eyes met. There was an unspoken understanding in that gaze, a quiet acknowledgement of the moment they were sharing. He nodded, his expression calm but thoughtful. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice carrying a weight she could not place. He picked up his knife and fork, cutting the steak with precision, as if each bite mattered more than just food. It was an experience, a small ritual. Maya stepped back to observe him from a short distance, careful not to intrude. Something about the way he moved, the slight pause between bites, reminded her that he was not just another customer. He was a man who carried the weight of his life in every gesture, and somehow, her simple act of serving him had become part of that moment. After a few minutes, he reached again into his coat pocket. Maya felt her heart skip, unsure if it would be another note. When he handed it to her, she accepted it with quiet curiosity. She unfolded it carefully, her fingers trembling slightly. This note was different. It spoke of gratitude, of noticing small acts of kindness in a world that often overlooked them. He thanked her for her patience, her genuine smile, and the way she had treated him without judgment. Maya felt a lump form in her throat. She had expected a tip, perhaps a polite thank you, but not this. Not a heartfelt expression of human connection. She nodded slightly, hiding her emotions behind her professional mask. "I'm glad you're enjoying it, sir," she said softly, keeping her voice steady. He smiled faintly, and for a brief moment, Maya saw something almost childlike in his eyes, an innocence she had not expected in a man so composed and wealthy. It was as if the note had allowed them both to step outside the usual roles of customer and server, letting them meet as two people, quietly understanding each other. Maya returned to the kitchen, trying to shake the warmth spreading through her chest. The restaurant was still busy, and she had tables to attend to, but the memory of the note lingered. She wondered about his life, the pressures he faced, and why he had chosen to share such personal thoughts with a stranger. It made her think about her own life, her dreams, and the people who had quietly touched her heart along the way. As she refilled a water glass for a nearby table, she noticed the subtle changes in how she moved, how she smiled. There was a sense of purpose now, a quiet confidence that came from knowing she had impacted someone's life, even in a small way. And somehow, that impact had returned to her, leaving her feeling seen and appreciated in a world that often rushed past her unnoticed. The evening continued, the restaurant alive with laughter and conversation, yet Maya felt a unique connection in the midst of it all. Every few minutes, she would glance at Mr. Dalton, curious to see if he had finished his meal or if he would leave another note. Each glance reminded her that sometimes, human connection could appear in the most unexpected places: a fleeting smile, a quiet word, or a simple piece of paper passed across a table. When he finally stood to leave, Maya felt a pang of surprise and sadness. She had grown accustomed to the rhythm of his presence, the small moments of understanding they had shared without speaking. He handed her one last note before stepping away, nodding politely. She tucked it into her apron pocket, careful not to let it fall, and watched as he walked toward the exit, leaving a small but lasting impression on her heart. That night, after the restaurant had closed, Maya sat in the empty dining room for a moment, reflecting on the evening. The busy lights, the chatter of customers, and the clinking of glasses had faded into memory. All that remained was the connection she had felt with a man she barely knew, a reminder that kindness, empathy, and understanding could touch even the most unlikely people. And somewhere deep inside, Maya knew that this was only the beginning of something that could change more than just her evening. It could change her life. The restaurant had quieted down, leaving only the soft hum of the air conditioner and the occasional clatter from the kitchen. Maya wiped down her tables and organized the menus, but her mind kept returning to the note Mr. Dalton had slipped her. It was folded neatly in her apron pocket, and she could feel its presence like a gentle weight against her hip. She finally found a quiet corner in the staff room and unfolded the note again. This time, she read it slowly, savoring each word. Life feels heavy sometimes. Surrounded by people, yet feeling invisible. I notice small kindnesses, and they remind me that not all is lost. Thank you for being real tonight. The simplicity of it struck her more than she expected. Maya had worked long hours serving strangers who often saw her only as part of the job. Rarely had anyone acknowledged her humanity. And here was a man, someone from a world so different from hers, telling her that he had noticed her, appreciated her, and felt seen because of her simple gestures. Maya's chest tightened. She folded the note slowly, trying to steady her racing thoughts. It was not just a thank you, it was a window into a life she could barely imagine. A life of power, money, and influence, yet filled with a quiet loneliness that few could understand. She felt an odd sense of closeness to him, even though she had only just met him. The note also made her reflect on herself. She remembered the long shifts, the tired smiles, and the moments she had felt invisible in a world that moved too quickly to notice anyone beyond their own concerns. Tonight, though, someone had truly seen her. And in seeing her, he had reminded her of the small but meaningful power of kindness. Her shift ended later that evening, and as she walked to her small apartment, the city lights glimmered around her like a quiet celebration. She clutched the note in her hand, thinking about Mr. Dalton. He had given her a gift far greater than any tip: recognition, understanding, and a sense that even the smallest gestures mattered. The next day, Maya returned to the restaurant with a new sense of purpose. She moved through the dining room with a little more confidence, greeting customers with a smile that felt more genuine than ever. And she wondered if she would see him again. By mid-afternoon, the door chimed, and her heart skipped. Mr. Dalton had returned, though he did not enter as before. He was escorted by his assistant, quietly taking a seat at a corner table. Maya approached, her tray ready, trying to appear calm. "Good evening, sir," she said. "Can I get you started with something to drink?" He looked up and offered a small smile. "Water will be fine, thank you." As she poured the glass and placed it gently on the table, she noticed something different. There was a warmth in his eyes that hadn't been there the night before. It was subtle, but it felt intentional. Maya realized that the note she had received had not only revealed his vulnerability but had also opened the door to a new kind of trust between them. Your steak will be ready shortly, she said, stepping back politely. Instead of speaking, he reached into his pocket again and handed her another folded note. Her hands shook slightly as she unfolded it. I wanted to say something more. Tonight, you reminded me that life is not just about meetings, decisions, and schedules. It's about moments, real moments. Thank you for showing me one. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. She quickly blinked them away, unwilling to let anyone see. The note was not only a compliment, it was a confession. It revealed that her actions, small, everyday gestures, had touched someone who seemed untouchable. She had never expected to feel so important to a stranger, yet here it was, undeniable and real. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. She smiled at her tables, refilled glasses, and took orders, but the world seemed brighter, warmer, and more full of possibility. She kept thinking about Mr. Dalton's note, and for the first time in a long while, she believed that a simple act could carry extraordinary meaning. Before leaving that evening, Maya tucked both notes safely into her apron pocket. She stood near the door, watching as Mr. Dalton quietly exited. Even in his hurried departure, there was a calmness about him now, a sense of ease she had not seen before. She realized that in some small way, she had helped him feel seen, and in turn, he had helped her feel connected to a world beyond the restaurant. Maya smiled to herself as she walked home. Life had a strange way of surprising people. A single note, a brief acknowledgement, could shift perspective, touch a heart, and leave a lasting mark. And tonight, she had learned that sometimes, the simplest things, a smile, a kind word, a moment of attention, could mean more than the grandest gestures. She held the notes tightly, her fingers curling around the folded paper. Somewhere, in the quiet of the city, a billionaire CEO had trusted her with a piece of his life. And somewhere, she had quietly given him back a piece of hers, too. The next few days passed in a blur of activity at the restaurant, but Maya found herself thinking about Mr. Dalton more than she expected. Every time the door chimed with a new customer, her mind half expected him to walk in. She served table after table, smiled at regulars, and refilled glasses, yet the memory of his notes and the quiet kindness in his eyes lingered in her thoughts. When he returned on Wednesday evening, Maya felt a familiar flutter of nerves mixed with curiosity. He arrived alone, dressed in a simple dark suit, carrying a calm yet commanding presence. Unlike the previous visits, he didn't hand her a note immediately. Instead, he looked at her, eyes meeting hers briefly, and gave a small nod, a silent acknowledgement that made her heart race. Maya approached his table, tray in hand, careful not to let her emotions show. "Good evening, sir. Can I get you started with your usual?" she asked. He gave a faint smile. "Yes, please. And the same steak as before?" She nodded, jotting down the order, but noticed a subtle difference. There was no distance between them now, no formality. It was as if the notes had built an invisible bridge, connecting two worlds that rarely intersected. For a moment, Maya felt the unusual comfort of speaking to someone who truly seemed to notice her not just as a waitress, but as a person. When the steak arrived, she placed it carefully on the table, along with a glass of red wine. Mr. Dalton looked up, meeting her gaze, and nodded appreciatively. Maya felt a quiet satisfaction. She had learned to notice small gestures in people, the way they shift their weight, the brief flicker of a smile, the way hands move nervously. Tonight, she noticed him breathing a little slower, relaxing into the meal as if he had carried the weight of the world until now. A few minutes later, he reached for a folded piece of paper, but this time, he did not hand it to her directly. Instead, he placed it on the table beside the wine glass and looked up, waiting. Maya approached cautiously and picked it up. "It is strange to share thoughts with someone I barely know, yet I feel a connection. Your kindness and attentiveness have reminded me that life has simple joys worth noticing. Thank you." Maya's fingers tightened around the note. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of surprise and something deeper: understanding, empathy, and respect. She realized that their exchange had become more than just a brief interaction, it was a silent communication, a mutual acknowledgement of human feelings in a world often dominated by appearances and expectations. For the first time, Maya understood that some connections did not require words. A shared glance, a small act of consideration, or even a note could convey what hours of conversation could not. And she realized she was not just observing him, he was observing her too. His attention was gentle, patient, and completely free of judgment. As she walked back to the kitchen, Maya reflected on the subtle changes she noticed in him. The man who once seemed untouchable now appeared approachable, almost vulnerable in ways that were not obvious but deeply real. She felt a quiet respect for him, not for his wealth or power, but for the courage it took to reveal pieces of himself to a stranger. That night, Maya noticed that her own actions felt lighter. She smiled more easily at customers, listened more attentively, and took moments to connect, even in small ways, with those around her. The simple act of kindness she offered did not just impact Mr. Dalton, it reminded her of her own ability to touch lives, to offer understanding where it was needed most. By the time she finished her shift, the restaurant was quiet, and the cleaning staff had begun their routine. Maya paused by the door, thinking of the notes and the quiet connection forming between herself and the billionaire CEO. It was unusual, unexpected, and yet profoundly human. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine a conversation with him: real words, real stories, shared experiences. She realized it was not about his status, his wealth, or even the mystery surrounding him. It was about the honesty they had exchanged, the unspoken respect and understanding that had grown between them in just a few short evenings. As she walked home through the glowing city streets, Maya felt a gentle calm settle over her. She held the note in her hand, reading it one last time before carefully tucking it away. There was something comforting in knowing that even in a busy, hurried world, two people could quietly see each other, recognize each other, and be changed by that recognition. Maya smiled to herself, thinking that life had a strange way of teaching lessons when least expected. Sometimes, connection was not loud or dramatic, it was quiet, subtle, and entirely profound. And tonight, she realized, she had been part of such a moment. The restaurant was quieter than usual on Thursday evening. Maya moved gracefully between tables, her apron lightly dusted with flour from the busy lunch prep. Even though the evening had just begun, she felt a small flutter of anticipation. She had been thinking about Mr. Dalton all day, wondering if he would come again, and what he might say or write next. Just as she refilled a water glass for a table in the corner, the familiar chime of the door caught her attention. Her heart skipped. Mr. Dalton had arrived, walking in with the same quiet confidence that had first caught her attention. He was alone, carrying only a small leather briefcase, but this time, he did not immediately hand her a note. "Good evening, sir," Maya said, approaching his table with a tray. "Your usual steak tonight?" He nodded, and there was a warmth in his eyes that she had not seen before. "Yes, please." "And thank you, Maya." Her name on his lips felt strange but comforting. It reminded her that he remembered her, that he had noticed her beyond the role she played in the restaurant. She smiled politely and placed the tray on the counter to enter the order into the system, but she felt a subtle shift in the air, as if the evening held something more than routine. When the steak arrived, Maya delivered it carefully, along with a glass of red wine. She watched him settle into the meal, noticing the small gestures he made, the slight pause before tasting the first bite, the way he held the wine glass thoughtfully. He was no longer just a distant, untouchable figure, he was a man enjoying a quiet, personal moment, and she felt privileged to witness it. After a few minutes, he reached into his coat pocket and handed her a folded note. Maya took it with a careful hand, curiosity mixing with a gentle nervousness. She unfolded it slowly, reading the carefully written words. I wanted to tell you something. You have a way of noticing small things that others ignore. You treat people with respect, patience, and care. Tonight, I realized that your kindness reminds me of what truly matters. Simple gestures, honesty, and sincerity, they matter more than wealth, power, or prestige. Thank you for showing me that. Maya's breath caught. This was more than gratitude, it was a confession of sorts. Mr. Dalton was sharing something deeply personal, revealing a truth that he rarely admitted even to those close to him. She felt a lump in her throat and quickly blinked away the emotions threatening to spill over. She looked up and met his eyes. For the first time, he seemed to study her, not as a customer studying a server, but as one person seeing another. There was a quiet humility in his gaze, a sincere acknowledgement that she had impacted him more than she could ever imagine. "Thank you, sir," Maya said softly. Her voice carried the warmth she felt inside, but she kept it professional. "I'm glad you feel that way." He nodded, a faint smile appearing on his lips. "You don't know how rare it is for someone to make me feel normal. To remind me that there is life beyond work, meetings, and expectations." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. He was not speaking about wealth or fame, he was speaking about loneliness and the human need to be seen and understood. She realized that this was the real gift behind the notes. He trusted her with something deeply personal, and in return, she felt a connection that transcended titles or money. For the rest of the evening, Maya moved through the restaurant with renewed purpose. She smiled at each customer, listened more attentively, and offered small gestures of care with a quiet confidence. Her interactions were no longer routine, they were meaningful, informed by the knowledge that even the smallest actions could ripple through someone's life in ways she might never know. When her shift ended, Maya gathered her apron and notes, tucking the latest one carefully into her pocket. She walked out into the cool night air, the city lights twinkling above. The encounter had left her feeling lighter, stronger, and more hopeful. For the first time in a long while, she understood the subtle power of empathy and kindness. She thought about Mr. Dalton and the courage it took for him to share his thoughts. It was unusual, unexpected, and deeply moving. She had always known that words could have power, but this was different. These were not just words, they were an opening, an invitation to see and be seen, to connect in a way that few people ever could. As she walked toward her apartment, Maya smiled quietly to herself. Life had a way of surprising people in the smallest moments. A single note, a brief expression of truth, could create a bond stronger than many years of casual acquaintance. And tonight, she realized, she had been part of something rare, a moment that would stay with her forever. Somewhere in the city, a man of wealth and influence had trusted her with a part of his heart. And in return, she had offered him recognition, respect, and a sense of humanity. It was simple, yet profound, and Maya felt an unspoken promise forming, an understanding that their connection, small and quiet though it was, mattered more than anyone could imagine. Over the next few days, Maya noticed a subtle change in her routine at the restaurant. The hustle and bustle continued as usual, but she found herself glancing at the door with quiet anticipation, wondering if Mr. Dalton would appear again. It was not about wealth or fame anymore, she had come to care about the moments they shared, even if brief and silent. When he did arrive that evening, Maya felt a familiar flutter in her chest. He entered alone, carrying his calm confidence like a second skin. As always, he chose a corner table, but this time, there was a different energy about him. He seemed lighter, more relaxed, as if the notes and their shared understanding had lifted some invisible weight from his shoulders. "Good evening, sir," Maya said, her voice steady yet warm. "Same as before." He nodded, smiling faintly. "Yes, please." "And thank you, Maya." Her name again, spoken by him, felt like a quiet bridge between their worlds. She nodded politely, placing the tray down before heading to the kitchen to enter the order. but she could feel the weight of anticipation in her chest. This was no longer just about taking an order, it was about the bond that had begun to grow between them. When she delivered the steak and wine, he looked up, meeting her gaze with a warmth that went beyond polite acknowledgement. Maya felt a quiet sense of connection, an invisible thread linking them in a way that words had yet to define. She placed the glass carefully and stepped back, letting the moment linger. Then he reached into his pocket and handed her another folded note. Maya accepted it with careful fingers and unfolded it slowly, her heart already sensing the meaning before she read the words. I have thought about our brief moments each evening. You remind me that life is not just work and responsibility. It is laughter, small kindnesses, and human connection. Thank you for reminding me of what truly matters. Maya's chest tightened as she read. She felt a warmth spreading inside her, a deep appreciation for the trust he was showing. It was not just words, it was an acknowledgement that they had built something meaningful together, even through these small gestures. She looked up and caught his eyes again. For a brief second, it felt like time slowed. They did not speak, yet there was a conversation happening in the silence. No titles, no roles, no judgment, just two people recognizing the humanity in each other. Maya realized that what had started as an ordinary night at work had evolved into a small, powerful bond. Throughout the evening, she found herself noticing him in ways she had not before. The slight crease in his forehead when he concentrated, the gentle way he sipped his wine, the careful pause before taking a bite. These were ordinary human actions, yet in that moment, they felt extraordinary. She understood, without words, that he trusted her with a part of his life, a part he did not often reveal. When her shift ended and she stepped outside into the cool night air, Maya held the notes close to her chest. The quiet city around her seemed to mirror the stillness she felt inside. For the first time in a long while, she realized that connections did not always need grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Sometimes, the smallest acts, the polite greeting, a smile, a note, could create a bond stronger than most people expected. Over the next few days, their small exchanges continued. Maya noticed subtle changes in herself as well. She approached her work with more patience and awareness, not just toward customers but toward everyone she encountered. She smiled more freely, listened more attentively, and allowed herself to feel the impact of her actions. Each note from Mr. Dalton was a reminder that even small gestures could ripple far beyond the moment. One evening, she found a note tucked under her tray as she walked into the kitchen. You have a rare gift, Maya. The ability to make someone feel seen and valued in ways that are hard to describe. You have reminded me that the simplest kindness can touch hearts. Thank you. Maya held the note, feeling tears prick her eyes. She realized that the connection they had formed was more than just fleeting moments, it was growing, silently, steadily. Each note, each glance, each act of care was weaving a small but lasting bond between them. She smiled quietly to herself as she walked home that night. Life had a way of teaching lessons in unexpected ways, and this was one of the most powerful she had ever experienced. She had learned that even the smallest gestures could matter deeply. And in return, she had given someone the gift of being recognized, being truly seen, and being understood. Somewhere in the city, a man of wealth and influence had trusted her with pieces of his heart. And in doing so, Maya had discovered a new strength in herself, the knowledge that her kindness, empathy, and attention to small details could create a connection that neither time nor distance could easily break. The restaurant hummed quietly with the usual evening activity, but Maya felt a calm excitement she could not explain. Tonight, she sensed, something would be different. Perhaps it was the lingering connection she shared with Mr. Dalton, or perhaps it was the way the city seemed softer, gentler in the fading light. When the door chimed, her heart skipped a beat. Mr. Dalton walked in, dressed as always in a neat dark suit, but tonight there was a lightness in his step, a quiet ease in his posture. He did not sit immediately. Instead, he looked around the restaurant, as if searching for her, and when his gaze met hers, he nodded with a faint, almost shy smile. "Good evening, sir," Maya said softly, approaching him. "Your usual steak tonight?" "Yes, please," he replied, his voice carrying warmth and familiarity now. "And thank you, Maya." Hearing her name spoken by him always brought a quiet thrill. She noted the sincerity in his tone, the subtle acknowledgement that the small bond they had been forming over these past days was real and meaningful. As she took his order to the kitchen, she reflected on how far their connection had come. It had started with a single note, a simple act of trust. From there, it had grown through careful attention, empathy, and quiet recognition. Each note, each glance, had built a small bridge between their very different worlds. And now, the bridge was strong enough to carry more than just words. It carried respect, understanding, and hope. When she returned with the steak and wine, Mr. Dalton handed her a folded note once again. Maya accepted it with careful hands and unfolded it, her heart quickening with curiosity. "I will be leaving the city for a while, but I wanted to thank you properly. Your kindness, your patience, and your genuine nature have reminded me of what is truly important in life. It is rare to meet someone who can make another feel seen without judgment. You have done that for me. I will carry these moments with me always." Maya felt a lump in her throat. She looked up at him, and for the first time, words seemed unnecessary. His eyes held gratitude, warmth, and a quiet trust that went deeper than any note could convey. She smiled gently, trying to keep her voice steady. "You've reminded me too, sir," she said softly. "Not just about kindness, but about noticing the good in people. About seeing them, truly seeing them. Thank you for that." He nodded, and for a moment, the restaurant seemed to fade around them. No customers, no clinking glasses, no background chatter, just the shared understanding between two people who had connected in a world that often overlooked such moments. Maya realized that this connection had changed her. She carried a quiet strength now, an awareness that even small gestures could touch someone's heart in ways she could never fully know. And in turn, she had witnessed someone from a world far removed from hers soften, open, and share a piece of his life because of her simple, human care. Before leaving, Mr. Dalton handed her one last note. This one was different, short, yet filled with hope. "Keep noticing the small moments, Maya. You have a rare gift. Perhaps one day, our paths will cross again. Until then, know that you have made a difference in my life." Maya tucked it carefully into her apron pocket, a smile spreading across her face. She felt a warmth that would linger long after he had gone. Life, she realized, was full of unexpected gifts, small, quiet connections that could leave a lasting impact. As Mr. Dalton exited, Maya watched him disappear into the city lights, feeling a mixture of sadness and hope. She knew their paths might not cross again soon, but the bond they had formed through notes, gestures, and understanding would remain with her forever. Walking home that night, Maya reflected on everything she had learned. Kindness mattered. Empathy mattered. And seeing another person, truly seeing them, could change lives in ways that were quiet yet profound. She held the notes close to her heart, a reminder of the trust and connection she had shared with someone who had seemed untouchable but was, in reality, very human. For the first time in a long while, Maya felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Life had shown her that even in the midst of routine, stress, and busy days, a single act of understanding could create a bridge between two souls. And that bridge, fragile yet strong, could carry hope, respect, and lasting change. As she turned the corner toward her apartment, Maya smiled to herself. The city lights reflected in her eyes, mirroring the quiet joy in her heart. She knew that while some moments were fleeting, their impact could last a lifetime. And tonight, she had learned that the simplest acts, an attentive ear, a kind word, a small note, could create something truly extraordinary, a human connection that changed two lives forever.